Well, I didn't expect this follow-up video to be this short, but here we are. To recap here, I purchased this Teac A-1500-W reel-to-reel tape deck last month. My first video on it was just reviving it enough to get it to play a tape and record. It could play back my tape, no problem, but it had issues with recording. The main issue that I had was dropouts. Sound volume when played back from the tape was inconsistent and played at an overall low volume. Additionally, I had another issue with the sound quality being weird. My recordings in Audacity sounded like it was coming from a really compressed MP3. I really wasn't sure what was causing it, and I had not heard any issue like it before on any equipment I've owned. I'll get to that second issue in a bit, but I did want to share some good news about the first issue. After cleaning the heads more thoroughly, it seemed to resolve the issue, or at least make it hard to notice. I'll circle back on that in a little bit. I decided to test out the record function using my receiver instead of making a recording in Audacity, and one thing I noticed was that the second issue, the one with the weird quality, appeared to go away. I originally thought the second issue was most likely due to a bad electrolytic capacitors, bad transistor, or maybe both. But as it turns out, it was most likely the microphone input on my PC that was causing the weird quality issues. Let me explain. The reason why I came to this conclusion was because I had not tested the results of the recordings on my tape with anything but the microphone input on my PC. So I didn't even plug it into my receiver or anything like that. My 3.5mm jack couldn't reach behind my PC to the line in port when I was making these recordings, so I figured that the microphone input was a good option, but clearly it was not. In hindsight, I think I should have saw that coming, but I kind of ignored my intuition, which wasn't a great idea. One thing about my PC case that I noticed was that the headphone input, or output is missing one of its channels. Like, it just doesn't work. And it came like that from the factory, and for some reason, I ignored my intuition when I built this PC and didn't get a replacement sent or get a refund for it under warranty, which I should have. That's what a normal person would do. Anyways, not to get too off topic here, but that was something that I really could have avoided easily. The fidelity issues are not fully resolved. The main issue is that the recordings are still significantly quieter than the source. So the issue with the low volume, low output, isn't solved. Dropouts are. Additionally, there appears to be a lot of background noise coming out of the deck's line output. I believe these two issues can be resolved by replacing all the electrolytic capacitors on the main amplifier or preamp board. When trying to hunt down the weird audio quality issue, which turned out to just be user error, I ended up testing the capacitors I could reach on the board, and they were reading extremely low values, like in the picofarad range, which is not normal when you've got capacitors that are like 50 microfarad. They should not be reading picofarads. That's way out of tolerance. The large gray ones near each of the motors were giving readings with the normal tolerances, so I'm not going to replace those for now. Also, those ones were actually the same brand as the ones that I pulled out of my receiver. Those ones were Nippon Semiconductor, which those ones are really good for some reason. From 1979, at least if I'm reading the date codes correctly, and they were still within, I tested them off camera, the ones from my receiver, and they were still within tolerance. So they were totally fine. I just replaced them as preventative maintenance, but I honestly could have just left them in there. So the low signal strength issue is also possibly due to worn out heads, but I can't know that for sure until I recap the whole thing. I could test it theoretically. The problem is I don't have the proper equipment to do that, so I'm just gonna recap it and see what that does. Worst comes to worst, it can play back tapes just fine. I mean, the pre-recorded tape I had, it played it back very well. It was only in one channel, but that's because the tape was recorded in mono. Alright, now this brings us to now. Currently, I plan to recap this machine sometime next month. The reason why I'm not starting it sooner is just mainly because I don't think I'll have time to work on this specific unit. Getting good access to the amplifier board would involve removing the guts from the chassis, or at least disconnecting a lot of wires and unscrewing some pieces of frame to be able to pull the board out to get good access. I learned my lesson with my Sony cassette deck and my receiver that you really do kind of have to take these boards out fully in order to get good enough access to, replace the capacitors and do a good job at soldering. So that's going to be something I'll have to do, and that's something I'll need a lot of time to do. And, I mean, this isn't even factoring in the amount of time it'll take me to replace the capacitors. I still don't have great soldering skills, and thus I'm not efficient, so I'll need to wait until I have another week where I'm available to just work on this. It doesn't mean I won't be working on other projects in the meantime, though. I have some other audio equipment that I have been meaning to fix for a long time. You just won't see the Teac get fully revived until later. Sorry that I couldn't have a more satisfying follow-up video for this. I originally thought it was going to be, but that turned out to not be the case. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.